Namaste, everyone. Welcome on a Saturday morning to our Talk to the Expert series on Spectrum, the Awareness Project. I'm Rashmi Sood-Anand, and I shall be a host for today. This is our 157th session, and gracing our session today is Miss Preeti Parekh, our guest and an expert. She has been she has a very extensive work experience with children on autism spectrum, ADHD, and developmental disorders or delays. She specializes in comprehensive assessments and individualized intervention that supports meaningful participation in their daily practices. Her very compassionate and family centered approach empowers parents through practical guidance, structured home programs, and sensory diets that help them improve, regulate their attention span, learning, and overall well being. And it's very important the way she is going ahead with this. It is really helpful for parents, caregivers, and the children themselves. She is trained as handwriting expert without tears, and she has structured teaching in classroom. She enables children to provide specialized handwriting assessments, and her classroom strategies that strengthened the fine motor development in the writing skills of children, which help them in their academic engagement. Additionally, she has her therapy focuses on enhancing gross motor skills, which are very, very important and integral part of a child development, which improves in balance, coordination, and independence for the children. She has led several workshops for therapists, teachers, parents, special educators, fostering deeper understanding of sensory processing and behavioral needs with children with disabilities like autism, ADHD, and learning delays and disabilities. So, today we are going to have a very insightful discussion and a talk from her, which will take us into insights into the understanding of this uh, sensory behavior or sensory issues with all of us, not only neurodiversity, but our neurotypicals as well, which we understand. So, not taking much of your time, I really warmly welcome ma'am to our 157th session of Talk to the Expert series. And with her so much of experience in this field, we would like her to throw light on this aspect today. A very warm welcome, ma'am, and a very good morning once again.
Good morning, Rashmi, and thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. And I thank you and Shivali for having me on this forum. And this is the topic I love to talk, and I can talk on this topic for us together. So thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. So I will share my screen and start with the presentation, and then I'll take question answers.
Yeah. So for our viewers, by the time ma'am is putting her presentation, she'll be sharing very key essential aspects of all the sensory mechanisms or the sensory issues we come across with ourselves and our children. So I request our viewers who are there may also put question in the comments so that by when ma'am finishes with her presentation, we can take them. Over to you, ma'am. Let's delve into your session and understand.
Okay, good morning and very warm welcome to all the viewers. So today's topic, as Rasmi said, is a sense organ sensory issues, and we are going to discuss about the behaviors which we see in a kids with neurodiverse brain and also with the neurotypical people. So let me start with my presentation. So these are the sensory organs or sensory system all of us have. So I'm sure most of you will know about the vision, auditory, olfactory, which is smell, gustatory, which is taste, what you eat, and touch, which is a tactile system. But we do have three internal sensory system which play very, very important role in our life. So one is a vestibular system, another is a proprioception, third is a interoception. I'm sure some of you would have heard about this internal system. So let me go through that and explain you in detail. So first is the systems or organs what you know. The olfactory and the gustatory sense provide us the information about the smell and the taste through contact with our nose and mouth. All of us know about it. The visual and the auditory senses provide information about sight and sound, which are coming out from there in the environment without actual contact with our eyes and ears. Seeing and hearing are sometimes called as a far senses because the message comes from the distance. But both these senses are very, very powerful. Let me tell you, the visual system and auditory system are very powerful, and most of us either a visual learner or a auditory learner. Some of are kinesthetic learner also. So these two senses very important. They compete with each other also. So whenever we work with any person or come across someone, we need to first understand whether the child is learning through the visual sense or a auditory sense, which is the dominant sense. I'm sure every one of us have one dominant sense through which we operate and we learn through that. That is the vestibular system. Is very, very important system. This system develops in utero. First system to develop in utero by 10 weeks. Okay. And this system play a critical role in modulation of all other sensory system. Your visual system also depends on that. Your auditory, your tactile, your proprioception, all the system depend on the vestibular, the development of the vestibular system. The receptors for this system are located in an inner ear. It goes through the inner ear and goes to the brain. As I said, it has a connection with auditory and visual. It is a foundation for all other systems. It gives us the information about the movement, the gravity, and changing the head position. Whether you are walking, you are running, what are you doing? So development of your gross motor skills and in turn the fine motor skill all depends much on your vestibular system. And along with vestibular, the proprioceptive system also, which we are going to discuss. It helps us to stabilize our eyes. So the children having a reading, writing issues, when they come to me at the age of 5, 6, the child has a difficulty with the writing or a reading or focusing or with the attention, I would first look at the vestibular system, how brain is processing the vestibular information. So our stabilization of our eyes, the convergence of our eyeballs, the divergence of the eyeballs, all that depends on our vestibular system. We develop our relations to earth through this vestibular system. It is a fundamental to all our action. So I'm sure now you people understand that how important this system is to all of us. Another is a proprioceptive system. This is our internal navigation system. So this system tells us where we are in space. What are we doing? Where my right hand, where my left hand, where my body, whether my body is moving or my body is doing any work. It is an inner navigation system. We don't have to do this with our vision. So when we have a good proprioceptive system, okay, the processing is good. We don't have to substitute it with our vision. So now the receptors for this system is all over the body, in our joints, in our muscles, in our bones, everywhere this. So if I'm moving my right hand, the receptors from here will send a message to my brain that my right hand is moving or my left hand is doing something else. Am I sitting? Am I standing? Another important role this system plays is how much pressure or the force we are applying to any of the activity. So, especially when it comes to the writing, some children may put more pressure, some may put less pressure. So this gradation of force or the pressure also comes from our proprioceptive system. And I've seen when the child has an issue, if not putting enough pressure, parents or at times teacher would tell, put more pressure, put more pressure. But it is difficult for them because this comes from your brain. So when this happens, we need to understand that we need to work with the proprioceptive system. We need to activate this system. And there are ways of doing it, which I would be discussing on it. Okay. As I said, the proprioceptive feedback arises from the muscle spindles and the receptors which are throughout the body. I hope I'm clear. Another is an
Yes, ma'am.
interoception. Yeah, this is again an internal system. This helps anyone to understand what is happening inside your body, whether you are hungry, thirsty, feeling of being hot, cold, fatigue, even the bladder is full, all that it is from your interoception system. It also affects the ability to understand the emotion because all this has a direct impact on our emotion. And when this system has, difficulty in processing this system for child with neurodiverse brain or even with the neurotypical people like us, we can't regulate ourselves. Our emotions go haywire. We may get little anxious, we may get angry, we may get frustrated. So it is an internal state of our body. Another system is a tactile system. Again, the tactile system also develops very early in utero and receptors are all over the body, which is very, very important system. Each activity in daily life like a dressing, combing hair, brushing, toileting, taking bath, all that dependent on the functional tactile system. This system again receives the information from the receptor cells under the skin all over the body. The information about it, light touch, pressure, temperature, pain, everything we get it from our tactile system. So this is, I discussed about all the sensory systems in our brain and all of us function through this sensory system. How this sensory system process the information and that we called as a sensory processing, okay, or sensory integration. Let me talk about what is sensory integration. So it is our body will get the information from the outside world and from our internal system, which I recently spoke about, the vestibular, proprioceptive, and the interoception, and the 5 external sensory system. So we process and organize this information so that we feel comfortable and secure. Then we are able to respond appropriately to particular situation and environment. And this is called as a sensory integration. Now this happens in everyone. We learn, our brain learn everything through processing the sensory information through our sensory systems. Sensory integration function develops in a natural order. Some children or some people may develop faster, some may develop slowly. And every child has a inner drive to develop this. See, nowadays in school, they follow multisensory learning is because if the brain is given more information through different senses, the integration is better and brain is enriched with more information. As you know, when we are born, we born with billions of neurons, billions of neurons. And as we are exposed to sensory information, sensory stimulus, the neural connection happens. So when we do it in a multi-sensory way, more and more neural connections are happening. The sensory integration develops in a better way. And that brain of the child is an enriched brain. So the sensory information, what we get in the brain is a food for the brain. As we eat food, to enrich our muscles and our body, okay, and our physical health. The sensory information is a food for the brain. So more information we get, more neural connections are developed, they are stored in the brain, and we can use it in structured and a meaningful way for our growth, for our attention, for our focus. So anytime you see the child has a difficulty with learning or some behaviors which are not socially appropriate, then we always have to think about how the brain is processing the information. We call it as a sensory processing or SPD. Now, when I talk about it, most of the people, I would say the neurotypicals, 5 to 16% of the neurotypical people have sensory processing issues. Okay. But when it comes to the neurodiverse brain, children with autism, ADHD, LD, CP, or Down syndrome, neurodiverse brain, they have 75 to 90% of these kids have a sensory processing disorder. And lot of kids in a normal regular school, okay, 7 to 8% of the kids have a sensory processing disorder, which is not being diagnosed, not being addressed, and these kids continue to suffer in the classroom because it's not been diagnosed or addressed. If it is early diagnosed, that child has a difficulty into sensory processing, lot of things can be done through the therapy and giving them a good strategies which helps them to improve their processing, because the brain is a very plastic, okay, and malleable. We can make a changes. So if it is done early, we can take a advantage of plasticity of the brain, and lot of changes can be made in the brain, which is the changes can rewire your brain and neural connection can improve. So all the viewers or those who are listening, I want to give a message that if you see any red flags in your child, you have to take a professional help and try and work on the child, stimulate the brain in a right way. You will see a lot of changes because of the plasticity of the brain. See, the plasticity of the brain is throughout the, throughout your lifespan. So, but the maximum happens till 5 years and up to 7 years. 90% gets developed by 7 years. But the plasticity continues even after that. If anybody wants to have changes, make a changes in their brain, learn something new, the rewiring of the brain happens. Yes. So what is the sensory processing disorder, SPD? It is inability to use the information received through senses in order to function smoothly in daily life. The people will have some behaviors, the learning may not be so good, their focus, attention may not be so good. So if the sensory integration is in a place, all this becomes very easy for the child development. It's not a specific disorder like a blindness or deafness. It's rather an umbrella term which covers the variety of neurological disability. As I said, children with autism, ADHD, LD, CP, Down syndrome, most of them will have 75 to 90% of these kids will have a sensory issues. And the neurotypicals, 5 to 16% of neurotypicals have a sensory issues. Okay, this is already I've said. Okay. So now when I say about the sensory issues, there are 3 types, okay? Either the sensory issues are over responsiveness, what we call as a hypersensitivity in any of the senses, okay? Either it can be auditory, it can be visual, it can be vestibular, proprioceptive. The child or any person would process the information in a more intense way. So they are hypersensitive to that information. So they would say, oh no, I don't want this information. The brain goes into flight and fight mode. And when the brain is in this mode, brain cannot function, brain cannot attend, brain gets insecure. Another is what we call as a hyposensitivity to any sensory information through any sense. In that case, unless that sensory information reaches to certain level of intensity, brain does not register that. So these are the people or kids, they need more and more information. So they are called as a hyposensitive. The previous one are hypersensitive, over responsive. These are called as under responsive. There are some kids, those are seeker. They want more and more information from any of the sense, which helps them to calm their brain. Now look at this. This is such a wonderful picture. I love it. Okay. So the sensory information goes to the brain, which is at the lower part of the brain, what we call as a subcortical level or a brainstem level. So that we call as the roots of this tree. So we need to feed the roots. So when we feed the roots, okay, the branches and the leaves would be more stabilized and they can grow. So that's how when this information coming to the brain is integrated in the right way at the lower part of the brain, we can take the child forward. So forward in the sense the higher functioning, executive functioning, we can work on their cognition, their behavior, social skills, their academics, their attention span, motor planning, postural stability, all can be worked on better, that building blocks are stabilized. So always work on the roots, feed the roots, then you can take the child forward. The learning issues which you see, or if you see the child is getting stuck up with reading, writing, with attention or cognitive areas, we need to think about that how the child's brain is processing information. Okay, so yeah, this is something, Rashmi, we have 5 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. We have time. You can, you can
Okay,
elaborate and talk. It's coming out really well, and I'm
okay,
sure, we will be definitely benefited the way you were explaining. And if
yeah,
you have some other thoughts also coming in a way to explain the parents the importance of the sensory diet or as you say, feed the roots. So you can please go ahead elaborating a
sure,
little more,
sure.
because that's
Okay,
the area where,
okay,
as you
okay,
mentioned, you can just go ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
yeah. So see how sensory processing disorder look like. The child may seek a movement. Child may be running around, jumping around, too much of movement, bumping into the people or objects. They are clumsy. Okay, that their posture may not be so good. That is come from the proprioception. Movement comes from your vestibular. Leaning on the surfaces, that's again a proprioception. Child seek a deep pressure. That's again a proprioception. Okay, avoiding on the playground equipments, that can come from the vestibular system. Avoiding some touch, tactile input. They don't like something. That is a hyposensitive to tactile system. If they want, avoiding, sorry, that's a hypersensitivity to a tactile. If some children like to touch, they like to touch people, they like to touch surfaces, they like to touch some texture, that is a hyposensitivity to tactile system. Some kids you would have seen that they will close the ears if there is some sound, maybe the loud sound or some screechy sound, that is a hypersensitive to auditory system. And the visual also. Some kids may not like the bright lights. So that is a hypersensitivity. Some kids like to look at some objects. They like to look at the moving objects or the flickering lights. So that is again coming from your vestibular and a visual. All these systems are in the brain, they are interconnected. So depending on what you see, the symptoms in the kids, then we do the assessment and come to conclusion, derive the hypothesis. Yes, this child have a difficulty in his vestibular system, either hypo, and accordingly then we plan a program or a diet throughout the day. So the purpose of the diet is to keep the brain regulated and calm throughout the day. If the brain is regulated and calm, brain can focus better, brain can attend to the task, brain can take instruction, follow instructions better. So basically, after doing assessment in detail by looking at the child and talking to the parents, and we also use one standardized format test, one questionnaire, a sensory profiling, we give it to the parents, they have to fill up, and again we do the calculation and come to conclusion and derive hypothesis that what exactly the brain is having, how the brain is functioning. Okay, the child may be hyposensitive to sound, but he may be hypersensitive to tactile sense. So assessment needs to be done, and then only we can give a program sensory diet. Here one size does not fit all. Okay, lot of time I've seen when therapy is given, people feel that, oh, child has to go on trampoline or be on the swing or doing some jumping, but it's not that one size fits all. Proper assessment, detailed assessment needs to be done, because the behavior, what you see is a communication. Child is communicating with us, and there can be multiple reasons for the behavior. So we as a professional and the parents also have to be a behavioral detective to understand why child is doing what he's doing. And what we see, the behavior at the surface is a tip of iceberg. There are a lot of layers beneath which we need to understand and unfold, and then come to conclusion that what exactly this brain needs and what type of therapy is needed, what type of program is needed, for home program is needed, sensory diet is needed for the child. Another thing, what happens when the child gets lot of information, okay, and their processing of the information is not as good as neurotypicals. And there lot of neurotypical people also have a slow processing. I'm sure in your life you would have met some people, if you tell them 2 to 3 instruction together, they would say, oh, wait, one by one. Correct? So this is something, their processing is not that fast. They need information one after another. So that happens in neurotypicals also. But when it comes to the neurodiverse brain, their processing time is more than us. So if throughout the day in a school or at home or any other scenario, classroom, if they are bombarded with so much of information from different senses, okay, their brain gets overloaded. And when brain is overloaded with the information, we call as the brain is in a chaos. And when the brain is in chaos, brain cannot focus. The brain goes into escape mode. Brain is not in a learning mode that time. The brain gets insecure and wants to escape. It is in a fight and flight mode. This brain cannot learn. So in a classroom, we see this, and the child then goes into shutdown mode. If then we don't stop, the brain goes into meltdown. And that we see with a lot of neurodiverse kids. Even I see with the neurotypicals also. At the end of the day, when they are done with their work, when they come home, all of us need some break, correct? And our regulators can be, some people want tea, some people want coffee, somebody wants to watch TV, somebody wants to lie down or go for a walk. So these are the regulators for us. We try to regulate our brain from whatever information or overloading has happened, come to the level where the brain is ready for the next task. Right? All of us do that. So we need some regulators for us also, which helps us to calm our brain. So when we do the therapy, these are the calming activities for the brain. So we prescribe sensory diet, understanding the brain, whether the brain needs some calming or sometimes the brain is passive and they need an alerting activity to focus. So as I said, one size does not fit all. After doing assessment, understanding the child in detail, thoroughly, we give this type of prescribed sensory diet. Okay, it's an individualized diet. These are some alerting activity. And this is how the sensory integration therapy happens in a center where they have all the equipments. If somebody has to see it from the distance, they would feel the therapist is playing with the child. But here, there are a lot of changes happening in the brain. Lot of neural connections are happening in the brain. Child is learning new things. And child therapist is helping child to calm his brain, regulate his brain so that the brain is ready to learn new tasks. So these are some pictures. And with this, I will stop my presentation and ready to take questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your in-depth, taking us through this presentation today and information. I was completely making notes of so many things, because I'm sure the parents who are listening to us now and the parents who will be listening to this conversation will be immensely benefited, because you have really pointed out very important aspects of our basic senses and how it stimulates the brain, and they are the root of a development of a child or an individual.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so very nicely put. And the way you have put that, you have to feed the roots properly. That's very important. The moment a parent sees a red flag, and they should not just sit over it and take a professional help. They should be, parents should be, a detective in a way, to see if they have neurodiverse children, to be alert of the sensory behaviors which children are showing, and work on it, and layer by layer, how they will go about it, and how much important it is that that you have told about hypersensitive, and the seeker, and the sensory information is a food for the brain always. So, and how can we regulate as parents by giving a sensory diet which is very specific and tailor-made to each person's requirement, whether it is neurotypical, divergent. So, with this, these are so many. I think you have touched so many important aspects which a parent can look into it. So, we have some of the parents who are online and they are asking a question. So, I have Nagmi here who says, and she has a child who is on autism spectrum, and she wants to know that can we do assessment for hyposensitive and hypersensitive, and how do we do it? We understand, like, how do we find out how my child is, and how can we go about it?
Yes. So as I said, when any child comes to me, how I do it is we give this profile which parents have to fill up. Then when they come, I will observe the child in a informal setup. What is child doing and what is he liking, what is he not liking. Then I talk to parents and understand the child in detail. That in different setup. How is he doing at home? how is he doing at school, outside, when you take him to the mall or some crowded places. Try and understand what is child doing, okay, in this situation after a detailed assessment. The first assessment when I do with the parents, it is almost I take 1.5 to 2 hours to understand the child and how his brain is functioning. And once that is done, as I said, I come to conclusion or a hypothesis. Yes, this system is hypo, this system is hyper, and then we plan a program for the child.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I hope that helps Nagmi. And Nagmi can also connect with you whenever she thinks it's possible and whenever she wants to. The other question, and also very important aspect you mentioned, is the plasticity of the brain, and what are the time spans when it is good for children, and then hence it's a plastic brain. So the learning is always there. The interventions can always help. So the sooner we get, the better it is for parents. So we have a question here, and it says, in this digital age, in schools, there's a concentration of focus on cursive handwriting. Are
Yes.
schools unnecessary working on it, or is it a required skill, or a necessity for children? Because all children might not be in a way to write.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, again, the school decides it, whether they want cursive or they are okay with the print. But lot of time what I have done when parents come to me with the complaint that the child cannot write in cursive, when I do a detailed assessment, and if I see that child has a difficulty, okay, in writing cursive, I do talk to the school. I do give them a letter that yes, this child has a difficulty. Some school accept it, some school does not accept it. Okay, so it all depends on the school. But we can work with the small muscles and the big muscles, which help the child to write in cursive. Maybe the some children may learn at 4 or 5 to write in cursive. This child may take some more time. Maybe at 8, 9, or 10, he can write in cursive if the school demands. Okay. I personally don't see that it is needed, okay, but I'm no one to say that because the school has to decide. But always we can work on that child muscles, their fine motor muscles and their gross motor muscles, okay, working and making them strengthen, and also work on their joints, okay, strengthening the joints, and it helps the child to produce the better handwriting.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And sometimes, it happens that as parents, we overlook and don't get into the shoes of a child to understand, why the handwriting is not coming proper. We are like forcing it. But underlying issue is maybe a sensory.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those are all areas where I think we should, as parents or caregivers or therapists, mindfully understand, help the child transition that phase of learning rather than, just pressurizing or so I think it's a work.
I would like to make a very profound statement here for all the parents, okay? If the child is not doing anything, avoiding anything, okay, understand it must be difficult for the child. Always understand difference between can't and won't. Don't always say that he does not want to do or she does not want to do. Rather shift your perspective that he can't do or he has some difficulty, and how do we address that difficulty. Always do that, okay? Never he can do but he doesn't want to do. No child, if they have a capacity to do, they would do, okay?
Very important aspect you've highlighted. Now, pertaining to somewhat this first question, there's another question which says, what are the life skill activities or interventions that can help a child develop fine motor skills?
Yes. See, again, it depends on the age of the child. Okay, what age you are looking for the development of the fine motor. We need to first focus on the core stability of the child and the big muscle stability, big joint stability. Okay. If the child has a difficulty with the fine motor, I would first look at the core stability. I would see the shoulder stability, and then I will focus on the fine motor. So any work which you do with your small muscles will help to develop your fine motor skill. But if the issue is at the central stability, okay, working here, it's not going to help. So again, find out the reason for the fine motor difficulty. But any task child can do with the hands improves fine motor activity, fine motor ability of the child.
Yeah, and that is why we see in preschools and all, children are made to do those finer things and which
Yes,
improves their, and you rightly mentioned the elasticity or plasticity of the brain is very much
absolutely.
at that developmental stage. And also this answers your question also of how being a detective parent, and not in the literal sense but watchful, helps you to identify those small fine motor skills which need attention at the moment and right intervention at that.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. So there's another question which says, for those neurotypical adults who have not yet been diagnosed with any condition and they find themselves having won some of these sensory issues, what should they do or whom should they consult?
Okay, again depends on the age, okay? But sensory issues, whenever anybody has, they have to consult an occupational therapist who is certified into sensory integration therapy, okay? Yeah.
And while you mentioned rightly that, sometimes we also might have those sensory, triggers, maybe to fluctuating lights or bright lights, and after some time we might face headache. So that is very inevitable with all human beings. But
Absolutely.
the underlying fact is we need to see when we are addressed as red flags and how often they are occurring, or they are in your daily life hampering your growth and all of
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. See, always, see, everybody has a sensory issue. As I said, me, you, everybody, how do we, what strategy, what we use for that, okay? And are we getting stuck up with the sensory issue? Okay, we are not progressing further. Is learning is getting hampered? Is there are some socially inappropriate behavior? See, if I have to give a simple example, I'm the one who cannot tolerate the tags of the clothes. Okay? So I make sure that I will take out the clothes, take out the tags of my clothes. Whenever I have to go out, whenever I have to present, or when I have to do anything which requires my focus. Okay. So that strategy I'm using it. But if any child who cannot tolerate tags or a rough texture, that child may cry. That child may scream. He becomes cranky. He may start hitting mother, okay, or he may say I don't want to wear clothes. So these are behavior. When you see, you have to look at that what sensory issue child is having, because every child will use some strategy. So from that strategy we need to understand that what is really bothering the child.
Yeah, so majorly for parents whose children are neurodiverse, they'll have to be really watchful, because at times the parents child might be not be able to communicate their feelings in verbal way, but their behavior and patterns will show that
Yeah.
there is some sensory underlying factor
Underline,
which is
yes.
which needs attention. So that
Yes.
can be a cue to parents to find out and work on it.
Yeah,
To as you said,
absolutely.
to give a sensory diet and sensory stimulation so as to calm them, and whenever it is needed.
The
Uh,
two basically outcome of sensory integration dysfunction or a sensory processing dysfunction is some socially inappropriate behavior, which is consistent, and the learning. If the child is not able to learn, not able to focus, difficulty to adjust in a classroom, not able to sit at one place, writing issue, reading issue, anything such thing, we need to first look at the sensory processing issue.
Also, ma'am, there's another aspect which somewhere you've answered. So, sensory issues are they only seen in persons with disabilities or children with autism, or it, as you mentioned, it can be a part to anybody's life.
Yes, it can be. See, everybody of us are between 0 to 100% when it comes to sensory integration. But how we manage that, how we deal with it, what strategy we use, it depends. Unfortunately, the brain wiring is different for the neurodiverse brain. When they have a sensory issue, they may do a different thing. Okay, as I said, screaming, shouting, running around, hitting, spitting, anything they can do. So that, but the neurotypicals will understand as I give my example, correct? Some people, if they are not, they cannot tolerate the loud sound or loud noise, they may not go to such places where there is too much of loud sound, correct? Some texture, if they don't like, they may not wear that texture. So that's how they manage their sensitivity.
So, ma'am, the same parent, her name is Saida Hussein. She says, while she asked you about hypersensitive and hypersensitive questions, she says, my child developed liking towards circular motion and flapping, which means he has vestibular sensitivity. So, what will be the diets or exercises for him? Does it need a consultation with the specialist to understand what intervention is needed? Or if it can be, if you could suggest a few here.
Okay. See, first of all, I need to understand how much he's doing. Maybe, as she said, the some spinning or flapping, and how much it is coming in the way. See, if the child is doing for just little time and managing rest of the things in his day, that's fine. But if it is too much and it's hindering his progress, hindering his academics, coming in the way to focus, then they have to consult someone and they need to have a proper sensory diet. Because see, just understanding the brain from one symptom, it's not right. Because as I said, all the system, everything is in the brain, one brain, correct? So we need to understand if the child is doing this, how is he compensating with other system? What is it impacting the other system? But whatever the child is hypersensitive to, okay, we need to give that to the brain, but in a controlled manner. So that helps the brain to calm down and regulate, which in turn helps to focus and attend to the task.
Yeah, I hope it helps the parent who's asked Sayeda Hussein, some way, and maybe she's able to understand what to do next about this. So we have a couple of viewers who are saying very well explained, ma'am, very informative session. Prachi Puranik says your talk on handwriting and what you've said have really clears the myths what parents generally have about handwriting of children. And she says she has herself experienced this myself, that how a version of cloth tags and even the slightest hair on my cheek
Yes.
or would disturb you. So very much relatable, what we have been discussing here to parents who are watching us online. Now this question comes from a teacher who has been handling children in class, and she says, what strategies can teachers use in classroom to support children with poor fine motor skills?
Correct. Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you for this question because teachers do face this difficulty with the fine motor. But again, as I said, the age of the child, okay, that's something we need to know, and again need to do the assessment for the postural stability of the child, central stability, how the shoulder muscles are there, okay, is the muscles are hypotonic. If the muscles are hypotonic, then that child doing any fine motor activity get fatigue, muscles get tired. So, but in a classroom, you can give, see, fine motor activity, if you put it on the Google, you will get 100 activity. But why that child has a difficulty with the fine motor, which we need to understand. Writing or any other fine motor activity is not only issue with the fine motor muscle. It is a issue of sensory integration dysfunction. So we need to understand that how the brain is processing. For the fine motor, I can tell you, you can give a finger painting, you can give a stamping, you can give a scissor cutting, the pegs, or the lacing card. Lot of activities are there. But I would request find out why child has a difficulty with the fine motor. Okay, then you will address the cause of it, not just that symptom.
Yeah, so going back to the roots again, finding the correct reason and feeding the roots correctly is what
Yes.
helps the
Yeah.
child in the longer run. Yeah. So I'm sure our viewers are getting benefited, and there's another parent who's Anuradha Singh, and she says very informative session, ma'am. It's really helpful for us parents. One of our very a supporter and always there for our sessions, Purnima Amma. She has been a teacher and she's 75 years old, and she says it's so important. The session is very, very important for parents to listen to,
Yes.
and it will really help. Another question we had from again a parent. Her name was the parent of Anjali Avinash Avikar. They said, does it work for elder children also, the older children? And her daughter is 32 years of now, and perhaps have some
Mhm.
symptoms of sensory issues. So uh, could these interventions be fruitful if as a parent they go in for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I said, plasticity of the brain is throughout your lifespan. Okay. So depending on the sensory issues, what that girl is having, definitely intervention will help. The strategies would be different according to the age. What
Right.
strategy I will give, I mean, we give for a 5 year or a 7 year or 10 year would be a different than if what I have to give for a 32 years. But it will definitely help.
So as I understand from from most of your talk, so very important for caregivers and parents is to understand, one, what is the sensory, what is the behavior which is associated with the kind of sensory issue, the underlying factor of the behavior, to
Absolutely.
understand where is it the coming from, and what is the age of the child, and hence will be the interventions that help them cope up with those
Absolutely.
situations.
Absolutely. You have
And
summarized it so well, Rashmi.
yeah, so it's good. Thank you so much. I think your session was really informative and it was really helping. And I'm sure each one of us who are in our respective fields will be able to make most of it. So, one last question from another parent. Its parent is Ginu Garg, and they say, my son is 11 years old and repeats everything 4 to 5 times, including gesture. It seems like a compulsion that he has to repeat. He can't control. Could you please suggest something on this during the session today?
Correct. See, what happens with children with neurodiverse brain, they don't have a connect with the brain and the body. So they don't have a control over what they are doing. The brain can't inhibit that. Okay. So it is not under their conscious control. So they keep on doing something like a flapping or repeating same thing or some gestures. Again, need to understand that when is he doing? Okay, what makes him do that? There can be a multiple reason. As I said, it can be for the regulation. It can be when nothing to do child will do. It can be to avoid some task also child would be do using this strategy. So first need to understand when is he doing and what is he achieving from doing this. What is he getting out of this? And then strategy can be given, but definitely can be worked on. So
So,
there can be multiple reason. Okay.
so while you say, ma'am, here that what is it the child achieving out of this activity?
Correct.
So how as a caregiver can we understand that what is that child achieving? Maybe the child is flapping the hands, or
Yeah.
and so what could be one cue for a parent to
Okay.
understand here?
So look at the child before this behavior is happening, during the behavior, and after the behavior has happened. So look at the facial expression, the way is child feeling calm down after doing this, when he's anxious is doing it, okay, when he's doing it, how does it look like? So if the parents or caregiver observe that and make a data, they can come to the conclusion that yes, child is getting out of it. If the child is doing this when some difficult task is given to him, okay, when there is nothing to do, he's doing it, or he's doing it to regulate his brain, to calm his brain. So these are the things are not bad. The stimming is not bad. Okay, you cannot just stop stimming or tell child to stop flapping, or no, that's not right, because it's not under their conscious control. So either parents can give them in a controlled manner, teach them where to do, how much to do at regular intervals, then it works. Again, depends on the age of the child, but don't stop the stimming. Don't tell them that stop it. What are you doing? This is not right. It's not going to help them.
Yeah, so I think you've made a very, very important point here for all the parents who are listening and all the caregivers too, that these behaviors, first, as a parent, we need to observe that the observation and, maybe observation for a span and noting down those points is very important before you go and talk to a specialist or a therapist for
Absolutely.
intervention.
Absolutely.
Because then only is when you're going to get the right
Yeah.
diagnosis and the care. So it can be a kind of a coping mechanism for them to feel relaxed, or any of which, or
It can be
anxious,
regulatory. Yeah.
regulatory. So it
Yeah.
could be both, like it could be when they're anxious or when it's like they're calming themselves. So
See,
very high.
behavior any child is doing is communication. Now, we have to be a behavioral detective to understand why child is doing what is it doing. There can be a multiple reason for the behavior. Try to work on the cause of the behavior, not the symptom. So
Yeah.
these are the profound statement I've done. So this will help all the parents.
So I think I'll just take up this last question, which says from again Saida. She says ABC anti-dissent behavior and consequences. So what is it, and how how to
Correct.
go about it?
Yeah, see, any behavior has an antecedent, so some trigger and consequences. See, consequences when it comes, how the caregiver is reacting to that behavior decides whether this behavior going to go up or going to go down. So, the caregiver does not have to react, but they have to respond in a manner where the child's brain gets regulated. That's what the parents have to learn. Most of the time, unknowingly, parents are reinforcing behavior by their reactions to that behavior. Okay.
I fully agree on this too. Children observe us all the time, and and uh, and also the behaviors are triggered by our responses, by our behaviors also. So how important it is for a parent to stay a little calm, and that should be a practice, not imposed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
It
those
takes
are all,
time, but
yes.
yeah, it takes time, but
And
the parents learn it, the child will get benefited.
yeah, so we have another comment. It's not a question. Ranjana from Untangled Emotions. She says observation and understanding underneath feelings is very, very important, and so true. We can try doing this for ourselves and for our children. So
Absolutely.
that's because you've really brought it beautifully in the session. Nina says very informative session. And I would request you, ma'am, maybe towards the end of the day today, or in like consecutive 1 or 2 days, would request you to kindly keep looking at the comments which are coming and which needs some response from your end. Do reply to our parents, because that will be
Absolutely.
appropriate, response to their queries. Thank you so much for your time
Thank
and
you so much for having
insights.
me. Mhm.
And I'm sure, the parents who are here with us, who are listening to us right now, and the ones who are going to listen to us later will be immensely benefited by, this very short, crisp insights you have given, which is, I think, it'll just be an enabler for them to understand their children better and work for their, betterment. Thank you so much, everybody. Stay tuned with all of us for more Talk to the Experts series. And thank you, ma'am. Have a wonderful day,
Thank
each one
you.
of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashmi, Shivali, and all the viewers. Okay. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.